Today's subject is lacking sleep. Will a solution be found or just another problem? It remains to be heard. Presently, in the Creepy Quadrant.
Coffee keeps people going. That's probably true for a lot of people on a lot of days. I'm not sure when my last good night's sleep was, and I'm not going to check my tracker. I don't want to know. I already know. Sleep deprivation can do funny things to the brain. But who's to say if it's the sleep deprivation or if it's me? It's making me irritable. I snap at people who don't deserve it. It feels in the moment like they deserve it. But later, when I'm lying awake at night, I wonder why. Why do I act like this? Why do I feel like this? Why can't I do better? Be better? But I know that kind of thinking doesn't do me any good. It doesn't do anyone any good, and it definitely doesn't help me sleep. So when my thoughts start to spiral, I try to turn my focus on the day ahead. This usually feels like a good idea at first, so I continue thinking through my day. What will I eat for breakfast in the morning after I sleep? I try to will myself to relax into my pillow. What kind of creamer will I put in my second cup of coffee, securely stored in my travel mug for the long commute after I sleep? I scrunch my eyes shut. What kind of day will I have at work after I sleep? That's usually as far as I get before I spiral again. There's nothing to look forward to at work. Nothing I can convince myself of. I used to find some joy in it, the routine, the new things, the conversations with coworkers. But it's lost its glitter for me, and I can't conjure it up anymore. This has all become a kind of routine. The repetition of my hours-long struggle to fall asleep night after night sometimes drives me crazy, and I just end up giving up, getting up, and watching TV, hoping that sleepiness will find me if I just take a rest from trying to rest. The last few nights, though, have been different. To be honest, I'm starting to get a little freaked out. I'll start at the beginning. So, Sunday night, I got ready for bed like I usually do. Building habits that relax you into the process of going to sleep is supposed to help. So I brushed my teeth while listening to some relaxing and familiar music. And then I made chamomile tea, no sugar, and got under the covers to read for a while before turning off my dim bedside table light. I was feeling optimistic. I yawned as I turned on my side, my blanket pulled all the way up to my chin. I could actually feel myself drifting off to sleep when something interrupted, and I was once again aware of my surroundings. Something wasn't quite right. Still, the night was quiet, calm. I closed my eyes again and nestled deeper into my pillows. I closed my eyes again and tried to breathe slowly. It didn't take me long to realize what was bothering me. The moon was just too bright. Not a cloud in the sky. The moon's light was shining so brightly through my bedroom window that it threw the shadows of my aloe plant on the windowsill onto the floorboards. It was pretty, but not helpful. I snapped my eyes shut again, but it didn't do any good. The glow of the moon seemed to penetrate my eyelids, insisting upon itself. So I turned over, away from the window. How could the moon be bright enough to bother me? I used to nap during the day all the time. I pulled the blanket over my head, but that didn't last long. I had to breathe. I didn't want to get out of bed to close the blinds and risk waking myself up, but I had to. When I got back into bed, I let my mind wander. But for once, it didn't want to go anywhere. My attention was drawn to the window. The blinds were shut as tightly as they could be. But the insistent moonlight still shone through the cracks, line by line of silvery blue. I yawned again. Eventually, something would have to give. Eventually, my body would have nothing left, and I'd simply have to sleep. But it didn't. Not that night, anyway. The next day was the same as the last. A coworker told me I looked tired. Yep. I didn't deny it or feel insulted. It's just the truth. They gestured to the cup of coffee I had in hand, the fourth cup of the day, and suggested that I might sleep better if I cut the coffee after 2:00. How am I supposed to make it through the last 3 hours of work if I do that? Monday night, I followed my routine and added some mindful breathing when I got under the covers. Breathe in. 6, 7. Breathe out. 4, 5. Again, the moon demanded my attention with its brightness. It felt like my pupils wouldn't dilate, wouldn't unfocus, even when I closed my eyes. Eventually, I groaned into my pillow and sat up in bed. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and looked out the window. The wooden floor was pleasantly cool against my bare feet, and the moon looked so impressive in the dark sky. So I got up and walked to the window. I slid it open and let the night air in. Then I just stood there at the window for a very long time. The moon was almost yellow, and it was huge. Almost full. It seemed to dominate the scene outside, like it had somehow swelled to twice its normal size, and was floating. I knew the light it gave off was the reflection of a single star, but it eclipsed every star, every sun, in the sky. So I reflected, too, on my life, on my experiences this far. It's impossible to truly know if you're doing the right things with your life, but as I reflected under the moon, I knew my life didn't feel right. I looked down at myself, at my arms, my skin glowing with moonlight, reflecting the reflection. I didn't ask myself what this feeling meant. I knew I wouldn't find an answer that night, and there was no use in despairing. I just stood in the moonlight and let myself feel it, reflecting on the value and the clarity of that feeling. The sun rose as it always does, Tuesday morning. The sunrise was extremely colorful, I noticed as I made my morning coffee, but beautiful as it was, it sparked no interest in me. Stifling a yawn, I capped my to-go cup. Why couldn't I have felt sleepy like this the previous night? I prepared myself for another struggle of a day. Tuesday night, I had just laid down to sleep when I got a strange feeling. Like when you touch something that's too hot, and for a brief moment it's okay. But before you consciously process the fact that it's going to burn you, your whole body jerks away by instinct. I wanted to leap out of bed. I needed to get out from under the blankets. Out in general, outside. Everything was tight, and the room was way too hot for me. My heart was constricting in my chest as I stood in my pajamas in the middle of the bedroom, and again the moon's light shone in on me. I heard something. All my muscles tensed up, all at once. A sort of howling. I felt frozen in place as it stretched out through the night, long and slow. The only thing I can compare it to is a wolf's howl. But it wasn't a wolf. It was raspier, less clear, but seemed to travel distance just as effectively. Whatever it was, wasn't close. It stopped. I didn't move, and the resulting silence felt loud. I held my breath. The howling began again, growing out of the quiet, rising up like the swelling of an ocean wave onto the shore, then slowly falling back, receding into the night. It was closer this time. I shuddered, though I wasn't cold. I was scared. Whatever the howling creature was, no, I didn't want to see it. I got back into bed, hoping it wouldn't come any closer, but as soon as I crawled under my blanket, the howling started again. My blood froze, and my breath caught. It receded again, a wave back into the ocean of night, and I buried myself deeper in the illusion of protection that was my flimsy blanket. Again and again the howling reached in through my window, closer each and every time. I don't know how long I lay there, silent and listening. It sounded as though this thing was right outside my window. Clacking steps back and forth on the paved street. Something scratching. Something grunting. At one point I was sure I heard it scratching the side of the house, but I refused to look. I just closed my eyes and tried to breathe and tried to ignore it. But ignoring it was impossible. Another night with no sleep at all. But this one was full of adrenaline and fear. I know that extreme sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations, but why would a hallucination like that keep me awake? That morning I got out of bed, got dressed, made a pot of coffee, and headed for the front door. I hesitated with my hand on the doorknob. I had not looked outside since yesterday. I wanted to pretend that nothing had happened, that everything was normal. When I opened the door, keys in hand, I braced myself for scratch marks, knocked over trash bins, something. But there was nothing. I suppose I'd gotten my wish. It was as though nothing at all out of the ordinary had happened the previous night. Though I thought about what I'd heard in the night throughout my day at work, it did not, thankfully, dominate my thoughts. Other than my standard exhaustion, I was actually in a fairly good mood. I really needed to get a handle on my insomnia. Yes. Maybe even talk to a doctor about it. But who among us doesn't have problems? Even if I had taken my situation more seriously, nothing would have prepared me for that night. Same routine, same problem. New feeling. Lying in bed, it seemed that I could feel a presence. I'm not sure how exactly to describe it. It was something like getting a spicy chip stuck in your throat, painful and intrusive, with an imposing heat. Like I said, it's difficult to explain. I think you get the idea, though. It was unpleasant and impossible to ignore. I didn't want to close my eyes. I didn't want to leave myself vulnerable. I wasn't surprised when the howling began again. In a way, I was almost relieved. Somehow, that threatening sound made my uneasy feeling seem justified. Something very strange was going on here, and it was much more difficult to convince myself that it was all in my head in the dead of night as I lay in bed, completely still, listening to yet another long, drawn-out howl, which was again coming closer, just as it had the night before. My limbs jerked as another voice joined it. It was not alone. Together, the two creatures' voices crescendoed up, creating a bone-chilling discord, and then again began to fall, lower and lower. Then came an answering call from farther in the distance. A third creature. The two nearer to me began again. More and more voices joined in that terrible, eerie song until I could not tell where one voice ended and another began. I couldn't tell how many there were. Too many. Coming closer and closer, their voices louder, digging into my brain. There was a momentary pause, where all sound seemed to leak out of the world. And within that pause, I had time to think. I was not going to do this again. I was not going to hide under the covers. If something was happening, I wanted to see what it was, not lie in bed and wonder, too afraid to move. No. I was going to look. I threw off my blanket and rushed to the window. Nothing. But the howling began again, loud and slow. It was so close. Voice after voice joined in, and I just stood there waiting. Again, silence. I glanced up and down the street, feeling that at any moment something would appear. Something would happen. Something had to happen. There, in the bushes at the corner of the house across the street, something moved. There were no lights on in the neighbors' houses. My street has no street lights, so I could see fairly clearly by the light of the moon. Isn't it funny that when we try to dispel the darkness with artificial light, we only emphasize that darkness which is just beyond the beam of the flashlight or halo of street light? Last night there were no such distractions, and I saw everything. Out from behind the houses and bushes and trees came these creatures of the night. They had gray fur and 4 legs, in some ways resembling the wolves that their howling voices had seemed so similar to. but they were unnatural. Strange. Their front legs were slightly shorter than the back, so that each of them appeared to be in a perpetual threatening crouch, ready to spring. Their tails were massive tufts of fur that swung back and forth as they moved. Instead of fuzzy dog-like paws, they had massive talons at the end of each leg, which curled heavily out and around, so that they walked on claws that were about half as long as their legs were. At first they circled each other in a strange swirling pattern across the lawns and the street, stopping every few minutes to howl up at the moon and draw more creatures in to join them. Then something in the pattern broke, and they started to act destructively, each one finding its own aggressive act. Some ran with astonishing speed up and back down the street. Some seemed to be trying to climb the trees. Some knocked over everything they could find. Others ran their massive talons along the edges of my house, leaving deep gouges in the wood. They did not do this to any other house, just mine. Strangely, the threat of violence didn't really feel like the scariest thing to me. It was more shocking to witness the disorganized movements, the lack of coordination within the group after the carefully choreographed movements they had all engaged in together just moments before. It was like a nightmare. But the only thing I knew was that I was not asleep. Still, none of them fought each other. They seemed, if anything, to be ignoring each other completely. Their movements were so random that the scene outside my window was utterly confusing to me. This went on for hours, and thankfully none of them seemed to notice me watching them. My bedroom is on the second floor of the house, and that distance made me feel just a little bit safer. I was scared, yes, but I know that getting up to look was the right thing to do. In seeing them, watching them, I could begin the process of trying to understand. They were no longer strange, unidentified voices in the night. I watched them until the moon had moved across the sky, and before the sun started to brighten the streets, they each wandered off, one by one, in different directions. So, I got ready for work with the sunrise. Really, what else could I do? There was no one to tell. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't change anything about it. So I just kept moving. Isn't that what we all do every day? We keep moving, no matter what's weighing on our thoughts. I found no evidence of last night's destruction on my way to the car. Trees and houses unharmed, trash cans upright. Everything was as it had been the evening before. I didn't look too hard, though. I didn't really want to know. What good would it do me to find out I'd had a psychotic break? And what good would it do me to find out it was real? No good at all. No good at all. So far, that's been my week. Work is, as always, more of the same. I'm currently trying to will myself out of nodding off at my desk. Today, it doesn't seem to matter how much coffee I drink. It isn't helping. And I'm not just tired, I'm actually sleepy. I've never felt so ready to close my eyes and sleep in a public space before. But I'm powering through the day like I always do. As soon as I get home, I give in to sleep, and there is so much joy in it. I barely make it to my bed before I'm gone. I sleep for hours, and by the time I'm alert enough to check the time, it's already 10 p.m. and getting dark. I stretch and look up at the ceiling. I feel good. really good. I guess my exhaustion finally caught up with me. I knew it would eventually. My stomach moans and I realize I haven't eaten anything since lunch, and even then it was only a granola bar. No howling monsters. Yet. So I head downstairs to the kitchen for a bowl of cereal. Cereal always tastes 4 times as good when I'm thirsty, and after sleeping for so many unexpected hours, I'm really thirsty. I'm smiling, leaning back against the kitchen counter, cereal bowl in hand, looking out the kitchen window without really seeing. I'm just in my thoughts. And what's so refreshing is that it's actually nice there. I'm not questioning. I'm not anxious. I'm just present where I am, right here in the kitchen. As soon as I become conscious of this thought, I'm a little afraid of losing that feeling. But that passes pretty quickly. Of course I'm awake now that it's time to go to bed. I can't get sleepy at night. That would be too easy. And I realize that I've been feeling more and more awake after the sun goes down, not only tonight, but a lot of nights. Not just awake in the sense of not falling asleep, but awake in my thoughts and my feelings. I've been finding space to feel like myself again, and that's magical. As soon as the sun rises and the day begins, I'm gone again. Not completely, but still. During the day, I belong to everyone else. During the day, my worth is dictated by things that others need from me. I realize now what the difference is. During the night, I'm free. During the night, I'm free. During the night, I'm me. That rhymes. Okay, it is very strange for me to be in that good of a mood. I set my empty bowl in the sink and drift over to the window. I unlatch it and slide it open to let the night breeze in. It's a warm night, with just a hint of the cold that is yet to come carried on the breeze. This early in the fall, that's about the only hint of the change in season. It looks amazing outside. Inviting, even. I know. You're thinking, this girl watched a pack of hell dogs destroy the neighborhood last night, and now she thinks it looks inviting out there? But it does. The leaves on the trees are fluttering easily in the breeze. The moon is reflecting off the dark pavement. It must be full tonight. I feel so relaxed, so alert. It's not the same feeling I get when the caffeine in my system has finally overpowered the exhaustion. I feel chill and ready for anything. I'm going out. But I'm still in my work clothes, and I'm not going to let that go on any longer than it already has. Leggings and a loose t-shirt. Let's go. I step outside and lock the door behind me. I stop. Close my eyes. And take a deep breath. The air is so clear and real, it fills me with energy. I can see the moon over the tops of the houses across the street. It's certainly full, and its calm white light is casting a reassuring glow over everything. Beyond the houses is a tree line, pines mostly, stretching their pointed peaks up into the night sky. I take another deep breath of this fresh night air and start to wander down the street. Somehow, in the moonlight, everything has this deep feeling of reality. Everything is overly present. I'm aware of so many things that I usually would never stop to think about. The rhythm of my steps across the pavement, heel rolled to toe, an uneven beat because my pace keeps changing as I slow to look at a cool leaf or the pattern in the siding of a house. My arms move at my sides, opposite my feet, the left one a little more than the right. I can hear the gentle movements of the leaves playing against the air and each other. I can smell the moisture on the pavement, in the dirt, on the trees. It must have sprinkled earlier today. Or was it yesterday? I check my watch, and no, it is still before midnight, about 11:30. I'm noticing certain plants stand out in the moonlight. They seem to wink at me. Tufted feather-like leaves glow silver here and there on the lawns as I pass. And I pick some. It smells interesting and feels soft and tickly. "Take me with you," it seems to say. There are more and more trees, and the houses are farther and farther apart. I realize that I've never been in this neighborhood before. Vaguely, I know that I'm heading towards the tree line I saw over the roofs across the street from my house. But I don't have a plan. I'm just going with the flow. Fewer houses mean fewer streetlights. I don't have my phone with me, so no flashlight. But it doesn't matter. I don't need one. The moon is so bright it's casting shadows of everything across the silvery ground. My own shadow walks beside me and the moon, working together to build this tall, swaying figure that accompanies us. I wonder vaguely if anyone in the house as I passed is awake. It could be that I'm the only one. Had any of them seen what I'd seen last night? Is that why no one dared to have the lights on or look outside their windows? There aren't any dogs out tonight. Whatever they were, they're gone. This night feels entirely different. I'm not worried. There's nothing to worry about. At the forest's edge, a huge white-tufted dandelion stands guard. It is taller than my knees. I almost nod to it with respect and take just one of its many leaves. The trees to my left look so inviting. The patterns in the branches and the moon-shadowed patterns on the pine needle-covered ground seem to be waiting for me. So I step off the pavement and under the cover of the trees. The blanket of dry needles softens my steps. I become a part of a different environment, quieter, steadier. It's been a long time since I've been surrounded by trees like this. I know that I should go back, return to the street. Eventually I'll have to find my way home again. But something draws me further in. I step deeper and deeper into the forest. The smell of pine needles and sticky sap all around me. I watch my feet navigate the patterns of the forest floor. I'm not watching where I'm going. The shadows lift away from my feet, and I look up. I have stepped into a clearing, and I am not alone. A group of women is standing in the middle of the forest, under the open night sky, in a steady circle. The moonlight glowing off their hair and clothes, bathing everything in its silvery light and making them look as though they matched on purpose. There is one open spot in their circle, and a shiver runs through my heart as I realize that it's for me. The woman with the longest hair opens her arms wide.
"Welcome, Moonchild."
Next time you hear that sound, think twice. What lurks in the forest's shadow may be you.